off, we are going to have this evening the Executive Director of the Missouri Democratic Party, Randy Dunn. He's going to speak for us, and I have Al Gerber, Committeeman Al Gerber, here to introduce him. Thank you, Al.
Hello. So I called Randy because our board had the idea that it'd be great to hear from the state committee what the plan is throughout the fall and how we could help out. And I asked Randy if he could find someone to speak to us, and he said, heck, I'll do it, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to introduce who's our executive director. Michael Butler, our chairman, chose Randy to be our executive director, and he's been so responsive and so helpful and doing great things there. So I will introduce to you Randy Dunn.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with all of you this evening, and hopefully you all can hear me clearly. And I just want to know, you should all know that I really appreciate you all, that I am here with you all on the night that the Chiefs are playing, even if it is just a preseason game. And so, but in all honesty, you know, I'm here with you all because the work that you all are doing is so important. This election upcoming is so important. And, you know, we recognize we have a lot of work to do. But you know, with the energy that we're seeing, you know, happening lately, not only here in Missouri, you know, just across state line in Kansas and across the country, the recent special election in New York, there's a new energy that we're seeing within our Democratic base. And so it's really exciting to see. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight is kind of what our plans are, what we are planning to do, how we can, you know, what, you know, help we need to accomplish our goals. But also I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that we have as well, because there are some challenges that are there, and I want to make sure that, you know, I'm speaking honestly about all of those things. And so as it relates to kind of what some of our goals are and what we are doing, a lot of the things that we are doing have been things that we put in place a while ago with the eye towards November of this year, as well as looking forward to 2024. One of the things we have really been focused on is trying to decentralize the party and to provide more support, direct support to many of our county committees and what we've been referring to as regional offices. And so we were fortunate that we were awarded a grant through the DNC for $50,000, significantly less than what we originally asked for. And then the parameters for how we could use those dollars changed from when we first made application to when we actually received the grant. But nonetheless, we're you know, thankful for the funds that we have received that is allowing us to support 7 regional offices across the state. The fund, so what we are doing is providing $1,500 a month to support the staff of these regional offices. Some of those offices already have staff on board. A couple of them are in the process of hiring and or looking to hire executive directors for their offices. And these funds from the DNC can only be used for paid staff. And so that is one of the things that we're doing because we know that we can't do everything from our headquarter office. We're a small staff of 5, and we know that we've got to provide that support across the state. So that is one of the things that we have been doing and really focused on that because local folks know their local communities better than anyone else. And so we want to make sure, again, that we're trying to provide that support in those areas so they can do additional training, focus on voter registration, voter education, getting out the vote when it comes time to election, all of those things that are you know, part and parcel with running a successful campaign by providing those funds to them, we hope that we'll be opening up other funds to be able to focus on some of those other activities. Because that's one thing that we have been doing. Another thing we are doing, we are in the process of developing a new long-term strategic plan for the party. So not only looking at short-term goals and what we need to be focused on over the next couple of months and next year, but looking long-term over the next 5 years, 10 years, in terms of what's going to help us turn the state around and get us back to the place where we have Democrats that are in control of the legislature. We have Democrats that are elected to statewide offices, in all of the statewide offices. We know, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And so we want to make sure that we have a plan in place that's going to help us achieve those goals, both short-term and long-term. In addition to those two things, what we're kind of doing for this election cycle, right now, we are on a small and tight budget. We have not received any outside help from the DCCC or the DSC or any additional funds from the DNC outside of the grant funds that we were awarded, which 100% of those funds are going directly to support those regional offices. We are not keeping any of those dollars. We're making sure 100% of those funds are going back to the county committees. But some of the things we're going to be focused on for this election cycle is voter registration. And obviously we know right now there is a looming deadline of August 28th, where the horrible election bill that was passed by the legislature will go into effect, which will severely impact the ability for everyday folks to register more people to vote. Within that bill, there is a provision that would, if an individual registers more than 10 voters, they have to register with the Secretary of State's office. And if they don't do that, then they are subject to fines and up to potentially a year in jail. So we've been really focused in terms of prior to that bill going into effect to try to get as many people registered to vote as possible. We are also working with some partner organizations who have filed lawsuits to try to stop that law from going into effect and hopefully repealing that law, if not in total, at least provisions of that law from going into effect. And one of the reasons why voter registration is so important, we have over 970,000 eligible voters in Missouri that are unregistered. And a good number of those are people that are likely Democratic voters. And we know that if we are going to turn things around, not only do we need to get those folks registered, but we need to make sure that those folks get out and vote as well. And so that's one part of our focus. Another thing that we're going to be focused on for those folks, and for everyone that's looking to get out to vote, is voter protection and making sure that when it comes time to election day, that folks aren't being harassed at the polls, that they know what their rights are, and if there are issues that do arise, that we will have attorneys and volunteers that are on the ready to be able to address those issues as soon as we are made aware of them. And so again, we want to make sure that everyone is able to exercise their constitutional right to vote and try to limit any encumbrances that we know Republicans are going to try to put in the way of folks voting. We, thankfully had a fairly, the August primary, we didn't have a ton of issues that were brought to our attention, at least during that election. I know in one instant there was a polling location where there was a Confederate flag flying outside of the polling location. We got a call on that and we were immediately able to deploy people to contact that polling location and have that Confederate flag taken down. We also had an instant where someone was told the polling location was closed. it was not. And so again, we were able to make sure that that person was able to cast their ballot that day. And so we're going to be very focused on voter protection leading up to the November general election as well. Some of the other things we're going to be really focused on is voter education and trying to make sure people are aware of who the candidates are, but also what the issues are that are going to be on the ballot that they're going to be voting on. And I will say at our upcoming September state committee meeting, some of the agenda items will be each of those ballot initiatives that are going to appear on the ballot to provide the opportunity for the state committee to weigh in on each of those ballot initiatives to determine whether or not we take an official position in support or opposition on each of those ballot initiatives. And so with that, that will give us the opportunity to, again, provide further education and information to voters in terms of what's going to be appearing on the ballot. We are working very closely with the House Democratic Campaign Committee. We work, there's not a whole lot of competitive Senate races this cycle, but we'll be working, as closely as we can with the Senate Campaign Committee as well to make sure for those, particularly the 24th senatorial district, that we are able to make sure that we are able to hold on to that seat. And also kind of leading up through November, from much earlier this year was our redistricting process. While ultimately the Senate maps were decided by a panel of judges, the House maps, the House Commission were able to come to an agreement on that map. While certainly not perfect, we expect that we will pick up some seats in the House. And there's a real possibility, and particularly I think the way things are going now, that we may even be able to break the Republican supermajority that they have in the House. With the new maps, there are now at least 57 districts that were won by Joe Biden. And there's another 10 that are within 2 to 3 points of a Democrat winning that seat from the last election cycle. So there's a lot of opportunities there for us. But again, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take good candidates running good campaigns and understanding that the state party is not here to do everything for them, but we are here to support them. But we need to make sure that we're providing the necessary tools, resources, volunteers for those candidates and campaigns to be able to run successful and full campaigns. Now, I kind of talked a bit earlier about some of the challenges that we are facing. And again, a big part of that challenge is the lack of outside help that we have received this cycle. We had been in communication with the DCCC and the DSC for the past year and a half leading up to this election cycle. Prior to the redistricting for the congressional seats, the DCCC was looking very closely at the 2nd congressional district. Unfortunately, the Republican legislature drew the 2nd district in such a way that it may make it more difficult for us. Having said that, we have an amazing candidate running there in the 2nd district. And so I'm still remain very optimistic on our prospects there in the 2nd district. But that is a challenge. And since the redistricting, we've pretty much heard almost nothing from the DCCC in terms of any support that they're going to be providing either in the 2nd district or any help at all here in Missouri. Similarly, from the DSC for our U.S. Senate race, again, we had been in communication with them over the last year and a half, and they had been very, watching the race very closely. And to put it bluntly, they told us, if Greitens is their nominee, that they're going to be pouring a ton of money here into Missouri. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate. The last thing I ever want to see is Eric Greitens anywhere near becoming a U.S. Senator. But being that he is not their nominee, again, we have heard absolutely nothing from the DSC since primary night. And so, at this point in time, we are anticipating that we're kind of going to be in this alone, this election cycle, outside of all the great folks across Missouri that have been putting in a lot of hard work over a long period of time. We're not anticipating that we're going to see much in the way of financial resources coming into the state, which definitely makes things a challenge for us, limits, some of the things we'd love to do. We'd love to be able to run a more robust field program. Just right now, unfortunately, we don't have the financial resources to do that. We'd love to be able to run a more robust mail program. We just don't have the resources to do that at this point in time. But having we continue to focus on all of the things that we have done and try to help in the ways that we are able to. There are some things that the state party is able to do that other entities are not able to do. And one of those is working with candidates for utilization of our mail permit, which allows those candidates to be able to send their mail out at a substantially reduced rate. And so we're going to support all of our candidates in that manner. One of the other things that we have done is purchased access to to research on in polling for folks across the state, as well as in some key races in the legislature. And we'll provide that information in kind to those candidates for those races as well. So those are some of the things that we're going to be doing that we're able to do. Again, recognizing the challenges and the limited resources that we have right now, but that's going to be our real focus. And the way that we can certainly use help from our townships, our central committees, is again joining us in voter registration drives. We have done some text banking and phone banking leading up to the August primary, and we're going to continue to do that leading up until November. So the more people that we have to help us out with those efforts would be greatly appreciated. And then, the other thing is, again, if there are any attorneys who would like to participate in our voter protection, and you don't have to be an attorney, but certainly folks who are really focused on that, we'd love to find more volunteers on that. And we're going to officially be rolling that program out some point in September. So be on the lookout for that. And then I would say the final thing is we are still in need of a lot of Democratic poll workers and poll watchers leading up until November as well. So if there's any of you who are interested in that, or know other folks who are interested in serving as poll workers and or poll watchers, please reach out to me and let me know, because we want to make sure that we've got true Democrats that are in all of those positions across the state. And just on that point, there's one county, we had our attorney do a sunshine request because the central committee there had submitted names of known Democrats to serve as election judges, and the county clerk sort of pretended like they never received that email and appointed all their own judges. And none of those judges were actually Democrats. And so we were able to successfully get a sunshine request to get the names of all and to prove that they actually did receive that email from the county committee, and they will have Democrat election judges, working the election in November now. And so again, we're going to continue to support in those types of efforts whenever we can as well. And I'll wrap up there. I know you all have a lot of other things on your agenda, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that anyone may have as well.
Okay, thank you so much. It looks like we already have a question from the audience. Al?
Just a quick one. Randy, I was looking on the Kansas City website, and they said that if you are handing out registration forms, just handing them out, and you are not being paid for it, that you don't have to sign up as a person, as a registrar, deputy registrar, I think is what it's called. I wonder if you could sort of clarify that and send it out to everybody so that we could figure it out. That's what they said on the Kansas City website. So
yeah, and I think the way they are interpreting that is if you're providing someone with the form for them to fill out themselves, and technically you are not registering that person to vote. You're just providing them with a form, and then that person would need to fill that form out themselves, submit and turn that form in themselves. And so I think that is the way they are interpreting that. I think I'm a very cautious person, and so I would say to make sure that we are not being afoul of the law, register with the Secretary of State if you're looking to do actual voter registration, just to make sure that they can't use any argument to say that we're doing anything nefarious.
Question from the chat. Where are these 7 regional offices going to be?
So the 7 regional offices that we are currently supporting is Jackson County, which is in the Kansas City area, Clay County, which is kind of in the Kansas City area as well, St. Charles County, St. Louis County, Greene County, Southwest Missouri Democrats, and then I'm forgetting the other one. I always do that. And then we are looking to support Boone County. So we're working to try to find additional resources for Boone County, and then also St. Louis City. So those are the ones right now that we are providing financial support to. And the reasoning behind that is those either already had staff and or were in the process of hiring staff and or had an existing office. And so that was the reason we have provided that support, again, with the caveat that the funds that we received from the DNC could only be used to support staff. And so for those that don't currently have staff, they know that they have to set those funds aside and earmark them for when they do have actually hired a staff person.
Do we have any more questions from Zoom?
Quick statement from Helena was that it's easy to register to become a solicitor. Karen did point out earlier there's going to be an updated form on the Secretary of State site, so might want to wait and see what happens there. Hopefully that will make it even easier.
Yes.
Yeah, and I will say on that, there shouldn't have to be an additional barrier that anybody has to go through to help register their family, their friends, their neighbors to vote. I will say, the form that is at least currently on there is fairly simple. But again, that requires an additional step. We know in a lot of our rural communities, folks may have issue with getting connectivity to Wi-Fi and that sort of thing. And in a lot of areas, folks just don't have access to a computer or a printer and those sorts of things. And so again, it's an additional challenge that the Republicans have put in place, and just ridiculous to think that somebody could serve a year in jail for simply registering people to vote.
Yes, that's a good point. We should note that the current form has to be printed and filled out by hand. They do not have an online fillable form at this time. So, and it also, an issue I noticed with the current form is that it says you need to mail the form in, but then it doesn't have the address on the form. It just has a fax number, and it doesn't say that you can fax it. We did look into this, and apparently you can fax the form in, even though it does not say so on the form. So just so everyone knows, but the address is available on the website, but it's not on the form itself. I hope the updated form might actually have the address you're meant to mail it if you want it. That would be great. I think we have another question. Oh, we've got two more. Okay, so three more. Okay, Committeewoman Oscarosa.
Hi, hello, Randy. Thank you for coming. So I had a question on judge elections. So I know the Bar Association puts out a little thing and they always give everybody 90 to 100%. But is there anything where we can delve more into some of the lawyers? I mean, some of the judges, like if they're part of the Federal Society or?
I think that's a really good question. That's something, we've not necessarily done in the past for a lot of these judicial elections, but I think that's a really good idea. And I think that gives me something to ponder to figure out how we can provide more information to help folks make an informed decision on whether or not they want to retain those judges or not.
Thank you.
Okay,
Can you email the form?
oh, can you say that again?
Can you email the form?
There's not any information on the website about it, about
Yeah.
doing that.
I don't think you can email the form at this time, but maybe the updated form will allow you to email it. As far as I know, the only options are to mail it by paper mail or fax it. Which of course, everyone still has a fax machine at home because it's 1995, but. Okay, was that,
That's it.
okay,
My question was, will there be a coordinated campaign coming from the MDP this coming couple of months, weeks?
We have been in conversations with some of our congressional candidates, as well as HDCC about, kind of around what a coordinated may look like. Again, the big challenge there is funding. And we have limited financial resources right now to be able to have a robust coordinated. I think there will be some type of coordinated. It may be just a bit more limited, just based on resources at this time. But we are having those conversations. To be frank, I wish we were further along in those conversations. And we've been having some of these very sort of high level communication with some of the, with our congressional candidates for months prior to the primary even. So now it's just a matter of really trying to find the financial resources to be able to put together a robust coordinated campaign. And if we are not able to, then again, there are things that the party can do and will do, just maybe a more limited and sort of a more tight-knit coordinated than we've seen in the past.
are those all the questions?
That was all the questions I've got so far.
Okay. Any more questions from our in-person audience? No? All right, well, thank you so much, Randy Dunn, for coming to speak to our Township Club today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, first of all, again, thank you all. And if you have not already purchased tickets for our Trim Dinner, which is scheduled for September 10th in St. Louis, you can do so by going to trimandinner.org and or through the MDP website to find more information about that. And we'll be rolling out more information about all of our and award recipients over the next week or two. So thank you so much, everyone.
Everyone, please do consider attending the Truman Dinner because, as Randy mentioned, we are not getting a lot of money from the federal party, so we need to fund this ourselves. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again so much for speaking tonight. We really appreciate it. It's been a really informative evening for us. Thank you. And do you
Have a
wanna-
great one, everyone.
Thank you. You too. I do want to mention that the excellent candidate for the 2nd Congressional District referenced earlier is our own Trish Dunby, who is the state representative currently for a number of our township club members. So we all know Trish is an excellent candidate. We've known that since she ran for state rep here. So everyone, please go out and volunteer for Trish as much as you can because she can use our help. All right, so next up, we have Brian Wingbermuehle from Pro-Choice America, and he is here to speak tonight about the current state of reproductive rights in our state. So thank you so much, Brian, for coming this evening, and thank you for waiting.
Absolutely. Hi, friends. I hope people can see me. I'm very tall and this webcam is very low. So we're working on that. Like our friend said, my name is Brian Wingbermuehle. I am the manager of political advocacy at Pro-Choice Missouri, and I also happen to be a county committee person here in St. Louis County from Merrimack Township, about 15 minutes southwest of where I am right now at West County Fire and EMS. So I'm here to talk about all things regarding abortion. And I want to actually start off with something a little bit unconventional, I think, and that are some ground rules. So let me figure out how to use my clicker. Fantastic. I think you all can see my slides on Zoom, but I want to talk about some ground rules when we talk about abortion, right? We know that this is oftentimes a hard subject for people to get into a room and talk about, even amongst friendly audiences like we are tonight. I know that that can make some people uncomfortable, and so we want to make sure that we're giving everybody the grace and the patience and the tools to have an effective dialogue about this issue tonight. So, number one, when we talk about abortion, we're going to talk about the word abortion, right? There's a lot of use of euphemisms and things like women's reproductive health care and things like that. Abortion is a medically defined term, and that is what we are going to be using tonight. We want to talk about people who have abortions with respect and dignity, right? We want to center the people who are impacted by bans on abortion the most. We know that the burden of House Bill 126, our disgusting ban on abortion here in Missouri, is going to hit low-income people, people of color, transgender, non-binary, LGBTQ plus people the hardest. And so we want to make sure that we're centering their voices in this dialogue as well. The big one that I'd love to talk about, don't repeat and amplify anti-abortion language, right? For 50 years, we have let people like Right to Life define the words and terms that we use in our advertisements and on our literature and things like that. And they're purposefully scary and misleading and meant to make you uncomfortable. We're not going to do that anymore. The biggest thing, using medically accurate terminology, that goes back to using the word abortion, right? Abortion is a term that is defined and legally and medically, and we're going to use that. The biggest thing that I love to send people home with is whenever you want to talk about abortion, make sure you're thinking about someone in the room around you might have had an abortion, right? 1 in 4 women of reproductive age in the United States will have an abortion in their lifetimes. That is your friends, your neighbors. You know somebody who's had an abortion, even if you don't actually know they've had an abortion. And so it's really important to kind of bring some humanity back to that and remember that everybody loves someone who's had an abortion. Not maybe. How do I look at this slide?
I gotta focus it again. There you go.
There we are. Like I was saying, anti-abortion activists for the last 50 years have made things uncomfortable and muddy and sticky. Anti-abortion activists use the word abortion 4 times more often than people like us do. And that's on purpose. They know it makes you uncomfortable. They know it's sticky and it's muddy, and they've done it purposefully, right? And so part of what we're going to do tonight is reclaim some of that word, right? So continuing on with some of our ground rules, how we talk about abortion, keeping some of those things in mind, we want to talk about, or we don't want to talk about, things like exceptions, right? These are often semantics, right? Talking about exemptions for rape and incest. We know that those are disingenuous and hollow, right? Rape is one of the most underreported crimes. I'm sorry, it is the most underreported crime in the United States. Only about 62% of sexual assaults actually go on to be reported. And so when you have in law written that there are exemptions in the context of abortion access for rape and incest, you're really re-traumatizing survivors, right? And we know that that is a hollow promise that is more hoops for survivors of sexual violence to jump through. Instead, we want to talk about how all bans on reproductive health care are extreme and dangerous, right? We don't need to garner more support for various restrictions or where we draw lines and things like that. That's up to patients. That's up to all of you in your own heart of hearts and with people's medical providers and themselves, not up for politicians and lawmakers to discuss. Another thing, like I said earlier, some of these anti-abortion terminology and talking points, heartbeat bans, late-term abortion, partial birth abortion. Perennially in the Missouri legislature, we have a bill that is titled the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Act. It's all bullshit. It means nothing. It's fictitious. They're not medically accurate. They are not going to medical providers for any of this information. It is merely a scare tactic. And like I said, they have successfully done this over the last 50 years to make us all uncomfortable. And so we're going to try and do our part in this room tonight to kind of air some of that out. This is another big one that's come up, using coat hanger imagery or messaging about dangerous or back alley abortions. At a time, in 1973, that was a very different reality than the reality we face. Oh, our screen's gone. Folks in 1973 were facing a very different medical landscape than we are today. Today, the WHO says that people can safely manage their own abortions at home prior to 10 weeks of pregnancy with a simple pill regimen of mifepristone and misoprostol. And so we want to avoid some of this coat hanger imagery and focus on organizations like ReproAction, Plan C pills, Women on Waves. These are organizations that really specialize in making sure people have access to that information, and in some cases, the pills themselves. So sort of some general talking points about destigmatization of abortion, and also some fun talking points for you all to take back to your candidates and your Thanksgiving conversations. Of course, 7 in 10 Missourians don't support political interference in abortion access. Access to abortion is essential. Access to abortion is popular. People choose abortions for all sorts of reasons, and we also don't want to make sure that we are further stigmatizing that, right? People, like I have up here on this slide, most people choose abortion out of love for themselves, their families, their dreams, their futures. Every reason that somebody may have an abortion is valid, and there's no shame in taking control of your own body, your own mind, and your future. Again, we're going to hit hard on self-managed abortion with abortion pills is safe and reliable. There are other ways to go about this. And of course, my favorite is that abortion bans perpetuate medically inaccurate information. Missouri Right to Life is not consulting any doctors or medical providers, right? They are here as a propaganda machine and frankly, nothing else. This dovetails with, again, I talked about this a little bit, but what the status of sexual and reproductive health looks like here in Missouri. Missouri was the first state to enact its trigger ban after the fall of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey on June 6th. Our Attorney General and our governor signed some paperwork, and we were the first state for our trigger ban to actually go into effect. Here in Missouri, we also have 114 anti-abortion fake clinics, often called crisis pregnancy centers. 74 of those actually receive government money. Last time in the 2022 budget, it was about $8.6 million. And you also have to remember that the legislature, some of that money is coming out of our TAMP funds, right? That is actively being taken away from living human children and being sent to these crisis pregnancy centers. There's a very famous anti-abortion advocate. Her name is Abby Johnson. And at a conference one time, she said, if you are operating a crisis pregnancy center, the best person who can walk through your doors is someone who thinks they're getting an abortion. We'll talk a little bit more about crisis pregnancy centers in a slide or two, but keep in mind that they are actively getting more tax dollars out of Missouri than most states. And that money is not only coming from just our general revenue, which would be offensive enough, but that's coming from TAMP funds, right? Temporary assistance for needy families. It's essentially what is a revised food stamp program. Missouri also has some of the highest rates of infant and maternal mortality nationally and even internationally. For Black birthing parents, that risk is 3 to 4 times higher than for white birthing families. Things here on postnatal and prenatal care are horrifying. Like I said, Missouri was, of course, the first state to trigger our ban. Abortion is now illegal in Missouri, except for the case of medical emergencies. I'm not going to go too far into that phrase, medical emergencies, because there is still some ambiguity around it, as well as many decades of case law as to what actually constitutes a medical emergency. And I'm not a lawyer and I am not talented enough to actually pick through that. But what we can take away from House Bill 126, what is the important bit, is that doctors can lose their licenses for performing an abortion if it is found to be outside of that limited definition. A Class B felony can result in 5 to 15 years in prison. And of course, you lose your license, you lose your livelihood, right? And doctors don't want to do that. Something that is really important here, and we want to make sure that everybody knows, is that patients under the current state statute cannot be charged for pregnancy outcomes. That includes abortion, that includes self-managed abortion. If a doctor were to do it and courts were to rule that it was outside of this limited medical emergency, patients are at no risk of criminalization. So that's something to remember, that the burden falls on medical providers, not patients. This is my favorite talking point. It wouldn't be a Pro-Choice Missouri presentation if I didn't put curse words on a slide. Again, I want to really hammer hard on this one, that exceptions for rape and incest are bullshit in a system that does not believe survivors, right? These are more hoops that are designed to get in the way. They re-traumatize survivors, and they're ineffective. Often in Missouri's state statute, it often requires survivors of domestic and sexual violence to actually file police reports. As I mentioned, that fun statistic earlier, about 62% of rapes go unreported. There's a myriad of reasons why they go unreported, and making survivors first go to police before they become eligible for these exceptions to our abortion ban. It's a hollow and disingenuous argument, and it's bullshit. Now we're back to crisis pregnancy. Speaking of bullshit, we're back to crisis pregnancy centers. They're often referred to as CPCs. You'll hear them sometimes called anti-abortion fake clinics. These are clinics that masquerade as healthcare facilities, but do not employ licensed medical staff. They often will mimic the branding and the sort of word choice of actual abortion providers. They often will set up shop right near abortion providers. If you're from the St. Louis area like we are here at West County EMS, you'll know that our last abortion clinic, Planned Parenthood of Central West End, just down the street is Thrive. Thrive is one of the 114 crisis pregnancy centers that operates here in Missouri. And based on some limited case law, they seem to be allowed to say pretty much whatever they want. You know, they can put up little sandwich boards in front of the driveway at Reproductive Health Services at Planned Parenthood and say the clinic is closed. They can offer rides somewhere else. They can offer you free pregnancy tests, free STI testing, all kinds of things. They will tell you the clinic is not open today. They'll tell you that you need to go reschedule your appointment, and it's lies, right? They're here to try to dissuade you out of your abortion, or God forbid, with all of the trap laws. Trap laws are, of course, targeted regulations of abortion providers here in Missouri. They're trying to wait until you are too far gestationally to get your abortion, right? It's more hoops to jump through. It's just a distraction. And those folks are entitled to your tax dollars here in Missouri. They receive hundreds of thousands, now updating this presentation, now millions of dollars after the passage of House Bill 126 that goes to intentionally mislead people about their reproductive health. Oftentimes, you know, you can get into these clinics and they will tell you things that, like, having an abortion impacts future fertility. It does not. It can tell, they will say that it increases your chances of breast cancer. Again, it does not. That is not actually peer-reviewed science. But they can get away with it all, and oftentimes these are often religiously affiliated clinics. There's a really, I know this concept is very strange, that, you know, there are fake abortion clinics trying to masquerade you and get you out of your abortion appointment. There is a phenomenal John Oliver video that came out probably back in 2018, right around the Supreme Court case on this, NIFLA versus Becerra. It really does a great job. It has some interviews with some of the staff at crisis pregnancy centers, and it's a much more concise and exciting, certainly funny presentation than I would be able to give. So we've talked a little bit about the reproductive health landscape, about the state, about the do's and don'ts of talking about abortion, but you all don't know who I am yet. Who is Pro-Choice Missouri, and what do we do in this state? I'll start off by talking about our clinic escort program. Of course, Pro-Choice Missouri used to be NARAL Pro-Choice Missouri. We are an affiliate of NARAL Pro-Choice America. Last summer, 13 state affiliates actually all decided to jump ship. We are our own organization. We are operating here in Missouri with our own tax ID and all of those things, and we're not going anywhere, because we know that despite what some politicians and lawmakers in DC want, that access to abortion is made in the states, and we're not going anywhere. A great example of that is our clinic escort program. It is our longest running and most well-known program It operates for more than 30 years at the 3, now unfortunately 2 St. Louis area abortion clinics. We are previously at Reproductive Health Services in the Central West End, as well as Hope Clinic for Women in Granite City and the Planned Parenthood of Fairview Heights. Right now, our clinics on the Metro East side in Fairview Heights and Granite City, they're expecting a more than 200% increase in patient load from this sort of cascade of bans that have come across the Upper South and the Midwest. You know, folks from Texas who then had to go to Oklahoma, and now it's banned in Oklahoma, who now have to come to other places, right? Illinois has unfortunately, and fortunately, I should say, become really an island of abortion access surrounded by parts of the South and Midwest where you're facing some really draconian restrictions on abortion. Illinois and their governor, J.B. Pritzker, have really done a phenomenal job in making it as accessible as possible. I mean, even between the leaked Dobbs decision and the actual overturn of Roe and Casey. I mean, signing executive orders, waiving 2-parent notification for minors, and really doing a phenomenal job. But of course, with all that phenomenal work and the increase to access, you're going to see more patients. And unfortunately, a lot of our clinics were just not really prepared for that right now. Our clinic escorts, of course, play a huge part in that. For more than 30 years, they've gotten their patients through the protesters to their appointments. But we know that the overturn of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, that those anti-abortion actors are energized. They're angrier. There are more of them. They're at those 2 Metro East clinics every single day. They used to previously only really be there on the weekends, aside from sort of oddball days here and there. And so we are actually working currently in a coordinated campaign to get more escorts on the pavement. So I know I totally did not prepare for a hybrid format, which shame on me. I do have some things in front of me at our table for our in-person attendees, and all this information can be found at prochoicemissouri.org. But we are in desperate need of more clinic escorts, right? They are our most dedicated volunteers. You can see they're here in the pouring rain in Fairview Heights, but they do, you know, they interact firsthand with patients, and that is an incredible honor for them. And we want to continue that as these protesters get more energized, angrier, they're there more often, patients need more escorts. We, of course, also have the Pro-Choice Missouri Foundation. That is really the kind of meat of our organization. We are the research and educational arm of the organization. We supply research on things like judicial bypass, the economic impact of abortion bans, and of course, education on crisis pregnancy centers and the economic impacts and all of the things we've talked about tonight. This is also where our Students for Sex Ed program comes from. Right now in Missouri, our statute on sex education in public schools is incredibly, incredibly vague. And oftentimes advocates will tell you that that's a good thing, even though it doesn't mandate that they're teaching you sex education, which they absolutely should be. It means that they are not teaching you sex education. And it means that they are also not necessarily putting in religiously affiliated material, stigmatizing language, things like that. I know that from personal experience, I went to Rockwood Summit. We had Thrive, a crisis pregnancy center, come in and do our sex education. And so while that very ambiguous statute allows for people like Thrive to come in and hold those sorts of events, it also allows for good people who actually want students to have, you know, medically accurate and inclusive sex education. It still allows for them to be there as well. Right now, we are actually just wrapping up our summer sex ed program. But you can find folks on our social media as well as prochoicemissouri.org to hear all of the highlights. We had a survey that went around to hundreds of students around the St. Louis area, asking them about their sex ed experiences, all sorts of things regarding sex education in public and private schools. A couple of years ago, right after our omnibus abortion ban came through House Bill 126, our organization also released the high cost of House Bill 126 with Mayor Tashara Jones and Treasurer Adam Lane of the city of St. Louis. That is the economic impact that House Bill 126 has, not only on just the city of St. Louis, but the entire state. We know that there's a sort of chilling effect amongst the private sector when these often controversial, unpopular laws come through. I know it was very famous in North Carolina when they passed their bathroom bill, that canceled concerts, businesses moved their headquarters, all kinds of things like that. And so the high cost of House Bill 126 outlines a lot of the personal cost, what that means to individuals who are seeking abortion care, now that they have to cross state lines, they have to take off work. Missouri previously had a part of those trap laws, those targeted regulations of abortion providers, waiting periods and all sorts of things like that. But we also take into account the private and public sector cost. So for example, we know that St. Louis operates a lot of conventions that come through the city. And that's a huge part of the economy, especially because it boosts hotels and restaurants and public transportation, parking, all of these things. And if we lose just 3 conventions in the city of St. Louis alone, that's more than $14.6 million that St. Louis is missing out on because of bullshit laws like House Bill 126. We also, of course, have our PAC, our Political Action Committee. That is where most of my work focuses. It is the electoral wing of our organization, and we make endorsements of local, state, and national leaders who vow to take bold action on reproductive health rights and justice. We at Pro-Choice Missouri always like to consider ourselves the louder sibling to our friends at Planned Parenthood, where we want people to take that bold action, right? We know that for 50 years, we have had pro-choice leaders in office who did not codify Roe v. Wade, right? That there were opportunities in the last couple of decades that were missed, frankly. And so our endorsement means that these people have a vision, they have a plan to actually restore and expand access here in Missouri. This year, of course, with the fall of Roe v. Wade, we received more inquiries for our endorsement than ever before. The Pro-Choice Missouri PAC has made more than 65 endorsements this year after more than 100 candidates across the state saw our endorsement. So I painted a very bleak picture. Some resources for actually really geared towards patients, right? The Missouri Abortion Fund operates statewide. They actually help pay for folks to cross state boundaries, to pay for the procedure. An abortion typically you're going to pay between $600 and $1,000, and the Missouri Abortion Fund can help people out with that. Right by You is also an anonymous text line, again, for folks who I'm poor planning. They're all physically in front of me. Right by You, we've got these little QR stickers right at the front. They can go anywhere. You all are welcome to take them. They are also right by you on social media. It is an anonymous encrypted text line for folks who are seeking care in Missouri. It is typically aimed towards young people, but they're not going to ask you for a picture of your ID when you tune in. But they can help direct you to actually receiving the services that people are looking for, and certainly providing accurate information. Nobody has to be worried that they're going to send you to a crisis pregnancy center when you call your friends at Right by You. We also have the Regional Logistics Center that is actually based at our partners clinic in Fairview Heights at Planned Parenthood. That is for all things logistics, right? That is your transportation, your childcare, hotel stays, all of the things that actually go into getting to your abortion appointment now that it means Missourians have to cross state boundaries. Midwest Access Coalition also has a rideshare program. I actually regrettably don't know all the ins and outs of how it works, but they are actively taking volunteers who are looking to drive patients. And of course, patients are also allowed to seek them if they're seeking transportation. One of our favorite partners is The Right Time. They provide all 17 methods of FDA-approved birth control. If you have ever looked for some more obscure methods of birth control, you will know that they're often not easy to come by. The Right Time provides all 17 of them at all of their FQHCs across the state, and there are free, low-cost, no-cost options for people all over the state. So the best way to avoid an unwanted pregnancy is planning for it, right? And this is your way to do it. So, like I said, a very bleak picture, and I gotta apologize for that one. But we have a plan here at Pro-Choice Missouri that I've outlined tonight. We're looking for more escorts. We're looking for more regional organizers. We have $1 million plan here in Missouri to rebuild access to abortion by 2020. I'm sorry, not by 2024 is misleading. Our plan commences in 2024. We hope to have organizers in Kansas City, Columbia, and Springfield. We're going to be building a new headquarters here in St. Louis that can accommodate some of our partners like the Missouri Abortion Fund and MoHo Justice. These are organizations that just have not had the operating budget to purchase their own office space. We hope that our new access to abortion headquarters here in Missouri will become sort of an activist hub, right? For all of our organizations doing the work on reproductive health rights and justice, and really become a sort of community where we can move forward and rebuild access to abortion. That plan, it's not going to come cheap. So, I had to ask right up front of the room. Also, of course, at prochoicemissouri.org, it'll be the first thing that pops up in front of your screen, unless you have your pop-ups blocked. Our gala is happening on September 23rd. It is our biggest fundraiser of the entire year. Speaking personally, it is, of course, the abortion event to be at this year. It will be held in downtown St. Louis at the Marriott. We've got a great keynote speaker. I wish I could tell you all. I regrettably cannot, but I'm incredibly excited to have them joining us at the Marriott. And it's always a party. This will be my 5th gala that I've attended working at Pro-Choice Missouri, and we'd miss you if you were there. I think that's all I've got for you all, but I know I threw a ton of information at you. What questions, comments, concerns do folks have?
So we've been locked in this pro-life, pro-choice argument for a long time. But now that the Republicans have achieved at least, their positions they've taken on here, they're finding that legislating that women's reproductive health is a lot more complicated. When we focus exclusively on the term abortion, aren't we ignoring an opportunity to have a more expanded, nuanced, and intelligent discussion on the full implications of bans on women's reproductive health care?
So yes and no. It's very difficult, like you said, to actually legislate a lot of these things, and Republican lawmakers are really bad at it, right? Like we saw a bill come up at one point that actually named the device that is used in abortions, that is used to remove foreign body from the uterus. That of course has other medical uses than just strictly abortion care. So there are situations that pop up just like that. But really,
Post-miscarriage D&Cs.
Exactly. And there are also numerous things that are not regarding to fetal or pregnancy tissue in the uterus that perhaps would be required to be removed. Things like cysts, polyps, things like that. Potentially benign growths, all kinds of things. But it all comes down to the fact that everybody deserves access and control over their body. That includes IUDs, that includes birth control, that includes these medical devices that, clearly Republican lawmakers don't know anything about. And so really what we want to focus on is keeping everybody's healthcare accessible, right? And we often will default to abortion because abortion is, of course, where they started, right? 50 years ago, they were trying to chip away at that right. We know now that it, of course, has broader implications regarding IUDs and all these things that have kind of come up in the news. I know there was a healthcare provider in the Kansas City area who briefly stopped providing emergency contraception or a Plan B pill. We, of course, know that is contraception. It prevents a pregnancy, does not terminate one. But those intricacies are often missed in the legislative process, and there's often not a lot of room for nuance. And so when we focus on abortion, I think that's kind of what we're trying to bypass.
I'm concerned about our not addressing the issue of IVF and the attack on IVF, which is an important method for a lot of families. Are you all going? Can we be sure that we include our concerns for keeping IVF legal and safe for family planning?
Right. So right now, there's actually nothing in Missouri statute that has to do with IVF or any infertility family planning treatment. I know that there's, again, a lot of confusion, a lot of sort of things that are, honest to God, even making their way through other state courts, right, in states that are not our own. And again, we want to focus on those things, but that is not criminalized, right? IVF is still readily available here in Missouri, whereas abortion care is unfortunately not. What other questions, comments do folks have?
I have one. You mentioned about the abortion pills that can be self-administered. What is stopping people from ordering these from, say, Canada or something and just doing it themselves?
I have to be very careful here. You're asking about a prescription drug that I am legally not allowed to prescribe, and I'm not a doctor, so I can't give you all medical advice, but for educational purposes only.
I don't need it, so
of course, for educational purposes only, of course, there is the option to self-administer your abortion. A lot of resources can be found at ReproAction and PlanCpills.com. Technically, yes, if you were to order them from another country, are drug trafficking, right? You are purchasing a prescription drug, shipping it over state international boundaries, things like that. But telehealth plays an important role in this. That sort of has yet to really be fully hashed out, right? There was a moment sort of during the pandemic where people were getting telehealth abortion pills from a state like Illinois, where access to abortion is readily available, and they could have been shipped across state boundaries. We know that the Biden administration has similarly said that state legislatures cannot actually impede USPS activity, and that includes potential for shipment of abortion pills or other prescription drugs. So it's not totally been hashed out, but the WHO says that you can manage your abortion at home by yourself with a regimen of mifepristone and misoprostol up to 10 weeks of pregnancy. And again, I have to just unfortunately be very cautious about my word and my word choice here. But lots of resources can be found online. And the really important thing to remember here is that if you were to self-administer your own abortion, God forbid something were to go wrong, you can show up at a clinic or an ER. One, your pregnancy outcomes actually can't be determined. They will not know if you have self-induced your own abortion or if you have just had a spontaneous miscarriage. So don't be afraid if that is the case you have found yourself in. Please seek appropriate medical attention. But of course, we also know that in Missouri right now, at least, patients will not be criminalized. That is likely to change, or those waters are likely to get muddier as we move into the next upcoming legislative session. We know that Missouri Right to Life has all of their, what they call policy priorities, a really just laundry list of the most draconian things you can imagine, preventing patients from crossing state boundaries, wanting to hold patients criminally accountable, of course, the private right of action that we saw in Texas. All of these things are possibilities that we are expecting in the next legislative cycle. And really, these Republican lawmakers have been energized and are really basking in the national media attention and the opportunity to be the extra person who finally gets to, nail down criminalization in Missouri or things like that. Do we have any other questions from Zoom or in the chat?
Nothing right now. Anyone who wants to raise their hand or just speak up?
Seeing none, I will hand it back to our hosts. Thank you so much for having us, friends.
Really from Pro-Choice Missouri for coming to speak to our township club tonight. We really appreciate it. John, who's running our chat, could you drop a link to the Pro-Choice Missouri website, please?
We'll pull one up.
Thank you so much. And we did also share that link in the email. So those of you who are on our email list, in the reminder emails about tonight's meeting, there's a link to the Pro-Choice Missouri website. So if you want to look at their gala, the information about their fundraising gala that's coming up that Brian mentioned, you can find it there. Like he said, there's a pop-up that comes up right away when you open the site right now, so it should be easy to find. All right, well, thank you so much. That was so informative. We really appreciate your help tonight. I think that, you raised a lot of really important points regarding how we can sort of change the narrative and take back control of the narrative about reproductive health care in our state, and that's really important, so thank you. All right, so next up on our agenda, we have Committeeman Al Gerber, who wants to speak with us all about enhancing your impact in Congressional District 2.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, I'm not exactly going to speak on that subject, but I do want to mention that three of us got together, Harvey Ferdman, Steve Reed, and myself, and held a meeting a couple of nights ago. I guess it was on, I forget exactly, last Tuesday, about trying to get all of the groups who have an interest in flipping CE2, Congressional District number 2, and seeing what synergies we could get by getting together. Because there are many groups that want to see it flipped from Republican to Democrat. And they're all working independently, maybe at cross purposes, maybe stepping on each other, like for the example we had was, maybe several groups want to put billboards up. If they all use the same billboard, you know, the effectiveness is not that great. But if they talk to each other and one of them takes it on Highway 40, one takes one on Highway 70, blah, 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 we could greatly increase our impact. So anyway, that was the idea, was to get together the different groups in doing this. Don't think the pro-choice people were there with us, but it would be great. It would be great to have them there too. It wasn't sponsored by the Democrats. It was sponsored by MOPAG, which is a non-partisan group, although they are progressives, so most of them are Democrats. But it was intentionally not supposed to be partisan gathering just for that purpose. And we did have, it was a good first meeting. We shared what we're doing. Some groups were talking with each other on how they could work together. So we hope to do this a little bit more. We hope to get more such groups involved. And so that's basically what I'm putting out there. If any of you do want to get involved with that kind of thing, let me know. But there's certainly plenty of things we can do. So, okay.
Thank you, Al. Okay, thank you very much, Al. Again, we do, those of us who live here in Congressional District 2 in West St. Louis County, we do think this is a winnable district, even despite the terrible redistricting that was done. But the only way to win it is to get as many groups who are interested in helping win this district together, cooperating, on the ground, knocking doors, putting up ads, as Al mentioned. So if we can get anyone who's interested in collaborating, please do contact Al Gerber. And hopefully we can support Church Gumby and flip this district. All right, so next we have a Central Committee report and general announcements. Do we have a volunteer? Let's see, we've got John listed as the person to give this report, but he's running the Zoom. So Asma, would you be able to? Or... Okay.
Yeah, we had the elections. I can just quickly mention it. Yes, that's true. Asma gave me her proxy, so she wasn't there, but I was there. The last Central Committee meeting we had last week, basically the main thing we did was re-elect the board. It was the same, all the same officers that we had last time. I think people were pretty happy with the direction they're taking. The Central Committee, they are establishing an office. They're trying to hire an executive director. I think people are happy with the direction that they're going. And the idea is that we're actually taking positive steps. The other activity that we are doing is registration. The state committee has asked each county committee to take a real lead in that kind of thing, in registering voters. And I think Annie Marshall from closer to the city is Jefferson Township is leading that effort for the Central Committee. So we will be doing that. For all of you out there, we were going to be asking for help in that and getting people registered. So that's the main thing.
A couple other notes that I had. Gala, we were able to net almost $15,000. So that is good news. We're going to be able to use that to help candidates this year and going forward, as well as we're working on getting an executive director to help us with our fundraising throughout the year. So that will also help there. Mike LaBazzetta is the new Queenie committee man. He was approved at our last meeting, and he's replacing Butch Miller. And we're also, the Central Committee is also working with St. Charles and Jefferson Central Committees to co-host a fundraiser for Trudy Bush Valentine sometime in middle of September. Date is still being finalized.
All right, thank you, Committee Man John Judy. Okay, so next up, I want to ask everyone who's attending tonight to please consider volunteering at the Manchester Homecoming Festival that's taking place September 9th, 10th, and 11th. Our Township Club is going to share a booth with the West County Democrats. We definitely need volunteers to staff this booth. 2 other booths are going to be at the festival that I know of for Democrats. Trish Gunby is going to have a booth. She's looking for volunteers. And Deb Lavender, who is running for state rep in the 98, is also looking for volunteers. So we really need volunteers to staff up the Democratic booths at the Manchester Homecoming. We really want to get out there and talk to voters. We want to educate voters. We want to register voters. So those of you who have not yet registered with the Secretary of State's office to register voters, which includes me, by the way, I need to send in my form. Everyone who's interested in helping with that, make sure you get registered before this event. We are looking for volunteers right now for all shifts. So it's going to be Friday evening shifts, Saturday all day, Sunday all day. We need people to help set up the booths. We need people to help take them down. If you've got just 2 hours to give, that would be really helpful to us. So if you are able to volunteer, please contact me, jjudy at my email address, which is jjudy@gmail.com, or you can also contact us through our Township Club Facebook website. Facebook page rather. Our Township Club Facebook page has contact options, so contact us, email me, let me know if you are interested in volunteering, and we are going to be, as I said, collaborating with the West County Democrats, so they'll be providing some of the volunteers. It's really important that we get out and speak to voters out here in the 2nd Congressional District, especially. And there are also a number of very important state house races in our area, flippable districts, with great candidates running who just need our support getting the vote out in order to win. So this is where, during the pandemic, we kind of had to pull back from in-person events. We're getting back out there now, and we really want to help grow our Township Club and help grow the presence of Democrats in this area and help all of our local candidates. So again, please contact me if you're interested. We could really use your help. Please don't make me sit there by myself for 3 days. All right. So that is our agenda for this evening. Yes, Al?
I had an announcement about the trivia night.
Oh, yes. Al has an announcement to add.
Okay. I just want to mention that some friends of ours, LaDonna Applebaum and Doug Clemens, good strong Democrat state representatives, are holding a trivia night this Saturday at the CWA Hall. It starts at 6 o'clock, so it's kind of early. If you're free this Saturday, please consider coming. $25, like most trivia nights are. It's their main fundraiser, public fundraiser, I should say. So please get in touch with me. I'll be going. If any of the rest of you want to come on along and have the great St. Louis tradition of trivia nights, please do. Let me know. We will arrange to sit together. Okay? So remember, it's at the CWA Hall, 6 o'clock this Saturday night. Thanks.
Thanks, Al. And Al reminded me of something else that I forgot to mention about the Manchester Homecoming, which is that both Deb Lavender and Trish Gunby will be marching in the Manchester Homecoming Parade, and they are looking for people to march with them. So if you're interested in that, contact their campaigns. You can contact them through their campaign websites. Both of them are actively seeking people to march in the Manchester Homecoming Parade with them. And Deb Lavender wanted me to mention, as always, that she's looking for canvassers. So, and she's got a really nice office set up that you can canvass out of really easily. They're running canvasses every day now, not just on weekends. So if you've got some free time, she can get you set up if you contact them through their campaign website, which is lavenderformissouri.com. Okay, so that's our agenda for this evening. Does anybody else have anything to add? Anyone in the Zoom have an event to share? Or? Okay, in that case, we'll go ahead and stop recording on the Zoom. Thank you very much for everyone who attended virtually tonight. We really appreciate you coming to our meeting.